We have lots to discuss today. We're very excited that you are able to join us, so a big, big thank you. For those that you don't know, Sintali has been an EDGE certification partner since 2015. So we've been involved in EDGE in a very long time. And I am the CEO. My name is Eleni Polychroniadou, and I will be sharing with you today a little bit about the new green building landscape. Now, we've been in the green building industry for many, many years, and we've worked with developers, consultants, governments, financial institutions, stakeholders across multiple different markets around the world. We've had the opportunity to see many projects succeed. We've seen projects struggle. We see what gets adopted. And just importantly, we also see what doesn't get adopted. And all of that perspective, all of that experience has led us to a conclusion that we really want to explore with you today. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's becoming increasingly true. And it's something that we think is really important as we look to the future. Now, green buildings is not a new concept. It's been around for decades, and the industry has been trying to prove that green buildings work for many decades. That's no longer the question. We aren't at a point in time where we're debating whether sustainability or green buildings are good. What we're really looking at, what we're really thinking about, is how do we make green buildings scale? How do we move from a small percentage of green buildings to something that is genuinely a meaningful share of all new developments? And that brings me to a statement that might be a little bit surprising coming from a certification company. But if I were to ask you what you think the biggest opportunity in the market is, what do you think the answer would be? Do you think it's certification? Well, I would argue that it's actually not certification. It's not IGBC, it's not LEED, it's not EDGE, it's not any certification. Now, before you think that sounds weird and wonder why you're sitting in a webinar hosted by a certification company that's not talking about certification, let me explain. We've spent years helping projects achieve certification, and trust me when I say we genuinely believe in certification. But what we're looking at in terms of an opportunity is so much bigger than certification because there's a fundamental shift happening. For the last 3 decades, we've been focused on certifications, standards, ratings, points, compliance. That has really defined the green building industry. But a developer doesn't wake up in the morning and think, today is the day that I'm going to go for certification. They're not thinking about certification. Investors aren't deploying capital because there's a plaque. Buyers aren't purchasing homes because there's a checklist. Those things are important, but ultimately, what everybody cares about, whether they're a buyer or an investor or a developer, is what those elements are actually delivering. Whether they're delivering buildings with lower costs, whether they're delivering buildings with higher returns, whether they're better performing assets, stronger investments. And that's why when we talk about opportunity, yes, certification has a role to play, but the real opportunity in the market is building performance. Now, why? Because performance is actually what turns the concept of sustainability, the claim of sustainability, into a real business case. It's what turns sustainability in green buildings from something that we're asked to believe in as a concept into something that can be measured, something that can be justified, something that can be sold. And for consultants, that means something even bigger. It means the conversation isn't about paperwork, bureaucracy. It's about value. It goes from checklists to business outcomes, from how do we get certified, what do we need to do, to how do we make this project perform? That's the shift. Certification is the proof, but performance is the actual product. And when that happens, the role of a consultant changes because you're not suddenly just guiding a client through a standard, you're helping them make a better investment. And that's why we're all here today, because the industry is changing. The market is changing. The expectations of developers, investors, governments, and buyers are changing. Just a simple example, BE is pushing councils for performance disclosures. Investors are pushing for sustainability-linked loans. Just 2 simple examples of how the market is shifting. And with every shift, there comes a choice. Are you going to continue using what you know, yesterday's playbook, if you will? Or are you going to evolve? Are you going to look at what's coming ahead and embrace a new market, a new way of doing things? That's why we're all here today. We want to share with you the vision that we see of what's coming down the line, the future of green buildings, the opportunities it's going to create, and how together we can accelerate and work together that transition to a performance-driven future. Now, for the last 30 years, green buildings has delivered a lot of value across India and around the world. But the environment around us has changed. The market that existed even 10 years ago isn't the same market that exists today. Let's look at some of the differences. First of all, the construction industry is moving faster than ever. Developers are launching more projects, they're managing more complexity, they're facing greater pressure to deliver quickly. Anybody who's worked as a consultant with a developer knows that reality. And at the same time, the timelines are shrinking. Decisions need to be made earlier, they need to be made faster. So the challenge is that sustainability in the way that it used to work doesn't quite fit into this speed. Many sustainability processes were designed for a slower world, and yet speed is their competitive advantage. So consultants who can simplify decisions, accelerate outcomes, move at pace are the ones that can create the most value. The second thing that's changed is that the real estate market is incredibly competitive, and that is only increasing over time. More developers are competing for the same buyers, the same tenants, the same investors. And as competition increases, margins come under pressure. And when margins shrink, every single decision is scrutinized more closely. Sustainability can't just be positioned now as an additional cost or a nice to have. It has to be positioned as a business advantage, as how does it integrate into the P&L? So the conversation changes from, well, how much does it cost? What is the added cost into what value does it create, which is critical when looking at tight margins. The third change is the claims, the marketing, the communication. 10 years ago, everyone could stand up and say, my project is sustainable, and they would have some level of differentiation. And yet, everybody started saying it. Lots of claims came into the market, people talking about ESG, about green buildings, about sustainability, net zero. And trust became harder and harder to have. There became more scrutiny, there became more skepticism. Are these buildings really green? What are their credentials? And how do they actually perform versus all of these claims? All of these stakeholders keep asking questions. Can you prove what you're saying? So the future of real estate and the future of green buildings isn't about claims. It's about measurable outcomes. Our fourth change of the market is around capital and buyers. Capital is paying more attention than ever before. Investors, lenders, financial institutions. We have the honor of having IFC on our call who can absolutely validate all the financial institution knowledge here. But all of that world is increasingly recognizing that building performance influences risk, it influences operating costs, asset value, and long-term returns. Pretty much everything that a financial institution needs to consider when deploying capital. On the buyer side, buyers are becoming more mature. They're asking more questions. They're asking for a better understanding of what are they buying? What is really underlying this particular building or asset? So all of this interest leads to more scrutiny. They want evidence. They want predictability. They want verification. They want to know that what they're investing in or what they're buying actually delivers what is being sold. So the era of broad narratives and strong marketing statements is changing to an era of measurable performance, demonstrable change and impact. And of course, with that, there's the data question. So as part of demonstrating all of that evidence, buyers, investors want more data. And we have more data available today than we've ever had in our history. Energy models, carbon calculations, building analytics, financial analysis. The data is endless. So the challenge isn't around having the data, it's about making sense of it, communicating it in a way that resonates with the people that are asking those questions, in a way that is translating a concept, whether that's sustainability or energy modeling or building performance, into the language and the way in which other stakeholders can understand it. Decision makers have less time. They have shorter attention span, so they can't sift through pages and pages and pages of data and evidence. So complexity is a disadvantage, and having too much data that isn't translated simply is also a disadvantage. The people that win in this changing industry are the ones that can translate all of that complexity, all of that data into simple, compelling business decisions. Now, if you're wondering what all of these shifts have in common and where I'm going with all of this, the one common theme that all of these changes in the market have is that they are increasing pressure for everybody involved, whether you are the decision maker, the investor, the consultant, the architect. All of these changes simply make a more high pressure environment because the developer needs a faster decision, the investor needs stronger evidence, the buyer needs clearer value, and the consultant needs to deliver all of that in a scalable, quick way. So if I was to translate what all of that means, ultimately what it means is that the market is no longer focused on intention. It's focused on rewarding outcomes. But then it raises a really important question. For all of us in this room, we've been working on green buildings for a long time. And we know that green buildings create better outcomes, they reduce costs, they improve performance, and they make better buildings. But if all of that is true, and all of these changes are happening, then why are we still at such a small fraction of the global building stock? Why are we still only at 3% of the market? After more than 30 years, the penetration should be higher. So we have to ask ourselves a question, an important question that says, does sustainability work? Well, yes, we know that it does. It's been proved, it's been demonstrated, the technologies have been done, a million studies have been done. Green buildings actually work. So that's not why we see 3%. It's not a technology problem, it's not an implementation problem. When we think about why hasn't it scaled, well, often we get very common answers. We get, well, developers don't care. Sometimes we hear buyers don't care. Other times we hear that the market isn't ready. Other times we hear that the government isn't doing enough. These typically are the reasons why we think we're not at the 3%. I would challenge that. I don't think that's the real reason. I think, and we think at Sintali, that the real reason is because the market is rejecting friction. The market knows that sustainability is good, but they do not want and cannot handle the friction that green building creates. Now, what do I mean by that? When we think about what typically stops developers, clients really going for green buildings, it's actually very practical things. It's not hypothetical, philosophical discussions. It's things like, it's actually complicated to get my building from the design that I have to something that's green. The documentation takes too long, and I don't have all the evidence available to be able to prove that my building is green. It takes too long, and I'm on a really tight timeline with a very tight margin, and therefore I can't go and do my green building. It takes a lot of money to implement both the green buildings and to get the certification and evidence. There are unexpected reviews, steps that suddenly delay my project and impact my timelines, my costs, my project management. There's a dependency being created on experts because in-house in my developer organization, I don't have the ability to do this. And that is a risk for me because I'm now depending on external people. There's limited suppliers for the materials that I need to implement that align with my design, my spec, and my client needs. Or there's unclear ROI, and it's very difficult for me to justify why this investment makes sense. So in all of these, no one's really questioning that the measures and the sustainability wasn't valuable. What they're questioning is, or saying rather, it wasn't easy. There was friction. It was hard. And all of these factors ultimately lead to delaying projects or adding time into a very tight timeline, which means the developer is rushing right until the end, trying to get it all done and get it out of the door. And when the timeline crunches, then essentially what happens is You get your certificate and then you move on. And you haven't actually had a chance to do the thing that's going to bring you value, which is communicate, market, really push out the notion of I've invested in this, I've made this building green, I've created the evidence that says that this is green, and here's the value that you're going to get. So developers don't have time to go through this whole campaign, which means then there's no market awareness, which then leads back into this notion of, well, developers don't want it and buyers don't want it and the market's not ready. And it goes in a cycle. Now, why is that important? That's important because what it shows us is that when adoption is difficult, scale becomes difficult. Many systems have been designed for leadership, for the 0.01%. Few have been designed for mass adoption. And we really need mass market transformation if we want to scale businesses, if we want to scale the impact and actually truly decarbonize the built environment. Now, for mass market transformation, we really need three things. We need simplicity, we need speed, and we need scale. Because history has shown us something important. It's shown us that green buildings work. It's not been about proving green buildings. It's about making them easy to adopt. And that's why, despite having worked in green buildings for 30 years, we're still only seeing a fraction of buildings actually achieve these green international credentials and do it in a way that can be evidenced and ultimately have credibility. Not because developers don't care, not because buyers don't care, not because the government decided that it should or shouldn't exist, but because it's hard. And as humans, as people, as organizations, when things are hard, people don't do them. People resist. There's friction, there's challenge. Think about yourself. When something is difficult, when your own process is difficult, whether it's going to the bank or ordering something at home, if it's hard, don't you question whether you should do it? Don't you have that moment of, do I really need this? Put that in the green building context. It's exactly the same thing. So looking ahead, if the last 30 years of green buildings has been around building the concept, building the proof, what do the next 30 years look like? At Sintali, we believe that the answer is adoption at scale. We believe in this element of mass market transformation, and we truly see that the industry is entering a new era, which is what we're calling Green Building 3.0. Green Building 1.0, which was the start of the green building market, was about proof. A small group of pioneers wanted to demonstrate that sustainable buildings, green buildings were possible, and they proved the concept. Green Building 2.0 was about acceleration. Policies, ESG requirements, green finance, government, all of those market drivers helped green buildings go from something that was fairly niche into the mainstream. And they really accelerated the adoption. But today, we are in the next phase. We are not at proof, we're not at awareness, we're at scale. And scale is where Green Building 3.0 begins, because Green Building 3.0 is about performance. And that means people adopting green buildings, not because they've been told to, not because incentives exist, but because high-performing buildings create undeniable business value. They create lower costs, higher returns, stronger assets, and they make better investments. Because when sustainability becomes synonymous with performance, adoption doesn't need pioneers or leaders who can see the vision and take on a risk. It's a rational choice. It becomes a clear business decision. And that's how we're going to move the green building sector from a few percentage points into every new development, not through obligation or the required incentive, but through value. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's great, Eleni, but okay, the market is changing. Green Building 3.0, performance. What does that mean for me? You all joined our call today to learn something and to embrace this new Green Building 3.0. And from our side, Green Building 3.0 has everything to do with you as the consultants and the industry leaders driving this mass market transformation. Because green buildings don't appear by themselves, right? People make those green buildings. People enable those green buildings to happen. It is consultants like everyone on this call that genuinely make this green building vision a reality. Because every single project begins with a developer trying to understand what the opportunity is, what the investment is, how to navigate the process, what do they need to do, and how can they make the best building that they can. So there's an absolute direct connection between the adoption of green buildings and the effectiveness of green building consultants. Which brings us to part two of this discussion. This is the market. This is what's changing. Are consulting businesses ready for that change? Are consulting businesses actually built to enable this adoption? Because when we're looking at consulting and we're looking at the industry, consultants have many challenges of their own, right? We talk to a lot of consultancies. We work with a lot of you on this call, and we're very, very proud to do so. And we hear a lot of the feedback. And a lot of the feedback from consultancies is this idea that there's a lead generation problem. And it comes back into that idea of challenges of, why is the green building market not growing? Well, it's because developers don't care and buyers don't care. And so we're constantly talking about lead generation. But that's not always the true root cause of the challenge. One of the challenges that really sits at the heart of the way in which consultancies are traditionally working is leverage. Growth is typically tied to analyst hours. Every project feels custom. There's a lot of documentation to find. I literally had a conversation with a consultant the other day who said, I feel like a glorified bureaucrat because all I do is work with paper. Sales cycles are long, and eventually many firms fall into the same trap. They fall into the trap of needing more projects to bring more people meaning more management creates complexity, and more complexity creates stress. And what starts as growth and opportunity and excitement starts to feel like a burden. This is a linear growth trap. It's very common. Many consulting companies fit into this and fall into this trap for many years. If we're thinking about scalability, if we're thinking about the market that we all work in, the green building market, thinking about 3.0 and mass market transformation, it's not just the market that needs to embrace the scale, it's us, all of the players that enable that to happen, consultants, certifiers, all of it. The future cannot belong to a consultant that works the same way as you've done for the last 10 plus years. It belongs to the consultant who can create leverage. And just to clarify, what does leverage actually mean? Leverage is about moving away from that idea of linear growth, that 1 + 1 kind of leads to that line, and thinking about how can we do more with less? How can we separate outcome from effort? Think about what's changed in your own industry. Today, everyone has access to standards, to trainings, to webinars, to AI, to knowledge. Knowledge is no longer that scarce, exclusive thing that it used to be 10 years ago. So, where in the past people would pay for that expertise, that unique knowledge that nobody had access to, now it's about execution. The consultants who will thrive for the next decade are not necessarily the most knowledgeable ones or the ones that have the most qualifications and degrees, but actually the ones who can turn that knowledge into action. The ones who can simplify the complexity, communicate the value, build the trust, and ultimately create systems that can grow. The future belongs to consultants who can create value. And that challenges a very core assumption in the industry because it changes the idea of what can scale. Now, I've had the pleasure of working in India for many years now. And of course, I don't profess to know the market as deeply as you do. But one of the things that comes up a lot when we work in the Indian market is the question of incentives. And it's a big discussion with developers, with consultants around what incentive can I get if I implement green buildings? So I'm going to ask you a question. What happens if incentives were to go away tomorrow? Would your business die? Would your value proposition die? Have you built a business dependent on something that is temporary? Have a think about that. I don't need to know the answer, but I really want to challenge you Because when we're thinking about incentives, when we're thinking about subsidies, green loans, policy drivers, even ESG requirements, that is all something that can go away. And building a business, building a dependency, building a value proposition on the assumption that that exists is not durable. What is durable is building a business on intrinsic value, value that doesn't go away or depend on an external factor. And the intrinsic value of buildings has never been compliance, it's never been reporting, it's never been the incentives. It's always been performance. Because performance is about that translation into the business case. The implementation of green building practices, of having more resource efficient buildings, ultimately is putting it in a way that's measurable, justifiable, and sellable. It's really making the argument that this is a better building. This is a better investment. Certification is the proof, but ultimately, the implementation of green buildings is about making that asset better. And that is the opportunity to really build a strong, scalable business around business performance, because ultimately that doesn't go away. That is about translating sustainability into business outcomes. And it allows everybody to truly understand that this is the real value. This is the intrinsic value. Performance is the product. This is what you're selling. Everything else is around it. But ultimately, this is what people are going to buy. And this is what's really not going to go away, no matter what happens in the market. And a great way to visualize that is this performance pyramid, because performance speaks a language that everyone in the market can understand. Everyone can understand value. Everyone can understand return on investment. Everyone can understand business outcomes. They might not be able to understand the HVAC system or the chiller efficiency, but they can understand what business outcomes are. That's scalable if you can crack the productivity and the repeatability challenges. And this is the real opportunity for you as consultants, because you have an opportunity to finally come out of this niche, which is the certification specialist, the green building specialist. Instead, you're becoming an advisor, a business advisor, in many cases, an investment advisor in terms of where the new investments are going to be coming in, because you're helping developers improve project outcomes. You are directly tied to the bottom line, not to a CSR initiative. That puts consultants in a much stronger position. It creates a much stronger dependency from the client to the consultant. It's closer to capital, it's closer to growth, and ultimately it's closer to the direction of the industry. There's a lot of discussion right now that sustainability in and of itself will stop being its own silo and will start to be embedded into organizations. And this is a perfect example that as a professional, as a business owner or a consultant, you ultimately move from something that's very niche to something that's much more mainstream. So this is Green Building 3.0, moving away from this notion of being something separate, being a certification expert, into ultimately translating performance into value, becoming a strong business decision advisor to help clients ultimately meet this performance. So who do you want to be? Every industry, every big moment in time has a dividing line, let's call it. There's no good and bad. There's no right or wrong. But there is a difference between those who adapt and those who don't. One path is to wait. You can wait. You can wait for regulations. You can wait for incentives. You can wait for the market to change. The other path is to lead. You can help developers understand business performance, building performance, understand the value and the link between the two. You can help the market understand why better buildings lead to better business outcomes. Because Green Building 3.0 isn't something that's going to go away. The market has already evolved and it's evolving. And it's something that we're all part of and something that we all need to build. And the most important thing of all, and the thing that I want to tell you today, is that there's no CPD course or magical answer or guidebook that we can give you that says this is exactly what you need to do. Because ultimately, it's about mindset. It's about how you approach this market, not the technical degree that you have on this particular segment. It's about thinking differently, selling business value, creating demand, helping to shape what Green Building 3.0 actually is. And the future is going to depend on consultants who are players in this game, not observers. Those who are moving, those who move from learning to applying, from observing to building, from discussing opportunities to creating opportunities, driving change, not waiting for change to happen. Green Building 3.0 isn't about defining the standards that we use, it's about defining the actions that we take to make this mass market transformation happen, to move from a 1% to a 3% penetration to a 30% penetration of the green building market. So if that's where we're heading, and if consultants play a leading role in that, what separates those that thrive from those who struggle? I think it comes down to 5 principles, and we've talked about them today, but let me summarize them in a hopefully clear way that will resonate with everybody. First of all, sustainability is an outcome. Certification is a way to get there, but performance is the product. Clients appreciate sustainability, they might understand it, but ultimately they are making an investment in the performance of their project. The second is that ROI is the language of the mass market. Everybody can understand what a return on investment is. Everyone speaks in monetary terms. The fastest way to accelerate the adoption of green buildings is to connect sustainability to business value. Third, simplicity, speed, and scale drive adoption. Complexity slows down growth. Simplicity ultimately accelerates it. If we can remove friction from the process, we can really see that ability to scale green buildings. The fourth is that expertise is your foundation, but business is the multiplier. Technical knowledge is an absolute essential to even come into this room, right? You need to have your credentials. You need to know what you're talking about. But the ability to communicate value, the ability to translate that technical knowledge into the business world, that is what ultimately creates growth and opportunities for you. And finally, intrinsic value always outlasts incentives. Policies change. A new government can come in and completely change the policy landscape. Markets change. A bank might offer an incentive today and it might go away tomorrow. But solutions that can create genuine value, value that endures, value that is always there no matter what the market condition, that is what drives adoption, because that becomes a pure, rational business decision that simply makes sense. So these are the 5 principles that will ultimately define the consultants looking ahead for the future of green buildings, for Green Building 3.0. And the final question that we must answer today is, if this is the market that's changing, if this is what we need to do as consultants, how do we do that? How do we actually put some of these concepts into practice? What is the vehicle that allows us to get to Green Building 3.0? Well, that is another reason why we're all here today, to talk to you about some of the hows. Now, through our work with our consultants across different markets, we found that the biggest challenges into embracing this future version of the industry, this Green Building 3.0, typically fall into 5 categories. These are the 5 challenges that make scale very difficult for consultants. The first is, how do you turn interested prospects into paying customers? Lead conversion. The second is, how do you do that faster? So sales cycle timeline. The third is, how do you communicate and build a clear business case to demonstrate the clear intrinsic value of your offer to make it a no-brainer for a client to say yes? So ROI and value justification. The fourth is having the strong cash flow to be able to continue to deliver the services, particularly when projects can go from months over to years. And then finally, how do you create the portfolio of clients and projects so that you have that stability and don't need to keep going through the cycle every month trying to find new clients? You'll notice that the challenges of scale And the challenges of how do we get to Green Building 3.0 have nothing to do with technical knowledge. The barriers that consultants face are not lacking the knowledge and the technical expertise to do things. It's about systems. It's about sales assets, business tools, repeatable processes. The challenge isn't about becoming a deeper expert in this. You all already know that. It's about becoming a more scalable business so that you can embrace Green Building 3.0 and embrace that transition from the 3% market penetration to 30%. And that's really why we've created this program that you've all been invited to join our launch today, the Sintali IFC EDGE Consulting Accelerator. We're not here to teach you about sustainability. You already know all of that. We've created this program, and we're very excited to be launching it today to help consultants commercialize, communicate, and scale green buildings. That is our ultimate goal, to help you embrace the Green Building 3.0 transition. Now, what is our program? Some of you will know this a little bit better than others, but indulge me in just 2 minutes to quickly overshare a little bit about our program. But our offer has really been shaped around everything that we've talked about today. It's been shaped by what's happening in the market. It's been shaped by conversations, calls, a lot of one-on-ones with Man and myself on really understanding what's blocking scale. And the program is really about us giving you the tools to help that scale actually happen. We're going to be really thinking about helping you win more business through personalized support, strategic advice, and one-to-one, through guidebooks that help with that idea of mindset, of thinking about things differently, about how to structure and create that scalable business model, tools, templates, pitch decks, how to communicate the value of green buildings, how to be winning clients through effective communication and translation of value into business language. We're going to be thinking about tools to help you think about the building performance element, the ROI, the justifications. How do you put all of these concepts into the language that makes sense for your clients? Internal calculators around building the business for yourselves, feasibility decks, etc. Trainings, because at the end of the day, no single one person can do all of this. So we need as much capacity as possible to be able to make this mass market transformation. Most excitingly, we've got an exclusive retreat coming up in September, which I will be joining. I'm very excited to be heading over to India and joining you for a retreat. And we'll be doing some more surprises later on in the year. This is a first for us. We've never launched this program before, but we really believe at Sintali that we can give you the tools and we can work together to embrace Green Building 3.0 and help you create leverage for your business. And most importantly, there's no investment and no sponsorship required from your side. This is a true collaborative effort. We are investing in you, and you are investing in your business. This is about creating joint efforts to achieve mass market transformation because no one organization can do it by themselves. It has to be through working together. And from our perspective, to really achieve this, to really get to our goals, it needs to be through simplicity, through speed, and through scale. This is our effort and our initiative to really create a collaborative community to really make this happen, to get to that 30%. A couple of years from now, I don't want to be sitting and showing that 3% number. I want to be looking much closer to that 30% number. And the only way we do that is together. When we opened the applications for our program, we were so overwhelmed by the positive response. And it was just incredible to see so many different organizations, so many prestigious leaders in the green building space in India interested and applying, and actually beyond India as well. We'll be honest, when we launched this, we were thinking just India, but actually we got interest from the nearby countries as well. And we're super excited to expand it beyond India because that's how important this mission is. And that's how important what we're putting together is to help as many consultants as possible. Now, these consultants are part of our cohort 1, the ones who jumped on the opportunity, the ones who saw Green Building 3.0 and positioned themselves to have the early advantage of being the first cohort of joining us today. So more than 30 signed up and have been approved, and the group is already starting to prepare. So over the next 12 months, we'll be working closely with this group of consultants to really help build the tools, systems, and help get that scalability and that leverage. So big thank you to all 30 of you. We're really excited to have you as the first cohort. So what happens next? I'm almost done talking, I promise. So what happens next? Our first cohort of approved consultants, well, for you all, the work just begins. The only thing we ask from our cohorts is discipline and commitment. We can't do the work for you. We simply can provide you the tools. We'll be providing weekly assets distributed through our groups. We'll be providing the business development support, the guidance, but ultimately, each and every person in the cohort is responsible for execution, is responsible for really taking ownership and taking this forward. We are your partner in this. We are standing by you, but ultimately, it takes genuine commitment and the ability to turn ideas into execution. But that's really what's going to happen with cohort one. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Get excited, get ready. We've got some really exciting things to share with you. If you're on this call and you are not in cohort one, we have applications open for cohort two. So while we work with cohort one and start building momentum, we know that there's many other consultants who didn't get a chance to apply or new consultants that hadn't heard of this project before. So if you're ready and you're interested in positioning your consultancy for Green Building 3.0, please do apply. The market is moving and we'll be announcing when cohort two will be launched soon. Now, if you're interested in finding out more, my colleague Man Gandhi is on the call. He is leading this program, so please do contact him at any time. His WhatsApp and email is listed on there. But between us, we will be your guides throughout this new program, and we're very, very excited to be working with all of you. Just a couple of closing thoughts, and then we'll open up to some questions. I'd like to really just leave you with one thought. Over the last 45 minutes or so, we've really seen what the market is doing, how consultants have typically operated in that market, how the market is changing, and where the future is going. We don't know and we can't predict what's going to happen 30 years from now, but we know that new regulations will emerge, new technologies will emerge, and new opportunities will emerge. But none of them determine your future. Nothing that happens externally is the final determinant of what you do, who you are, and how you operate. Your response is ultimately what determines that. There are two types of consultants during periods of change. There are those who want change and they wait for the market to change. And then there are those who want to change and who help shape the future. There are those who wait for demand and those who create demand. Green Building 3.0 is not a prediction. It's the beginning of a change that is happening in the industry. There is no question. The industry is changing. The only question that you all need to ask yourselves is, what role are you going to play in this change? What role are you going to play in the evolution of the real estate market and of the green building market? Will you be an observer or will you be a builder? Are you going to wait for the future or are you going to help create it? For those who want to help create it, we hope you work with us to partner to help create the future that we all want. With that, I leave it open for questions, and thank you all very much for joining us today. Do we have any questions, man?
All good. Everybody is responding. And I will see you all from the next month in your city. And we will sit together. So, everybody, you have selected some targets that you want to achieve this many projects in next 12 months. So, that's what we will be discussing from next month on a one-on-one basis.
We do have, oh, sorry, I see one question in the Q&A box. So I'll just quickly answer that before we close.
No.
For those that are raising hands, I don't think we have the ability on the webinar to unmute you, but if you can put it in the Q&A box, happy to answer them if you just write them out. We did get a question on friction, um, and whether if the supply side is willing, why is the market not scaling? Is there a problem with demand or is it awareness in the right way? I think it's absolutely awareness in the right way. And so much of what we've talked about really is about the language and the communication choice. So when we're talking about awareness, it's not just awareness that green buildings exist. It's the understanding of what are they delivering, why do they matter, and how do you say that in a way and in a language that everybody can understand. An investor will understand statistics and data very differently than a home buyer, right? A home buyer wants to understand, what does my home do? How much am I going to pay? What are my utility costs? What is my investment? This might be someone's life savings going into a home. So the ability to turn building performance and the concept of energy efficiency or water efficiency into something that translates into, this is a really good decision for you. And yeah, you're investing your life savings to buy this home, and this is why it's a good investment. So absolutely, the awareness is not necessarily about, people needing to know that it exists. It's about understanding why it matters. And that's again why building performance really makes the difference. And it changes that idea, because if you're going to a buyer and you're saying, well, you might have a reduced interest rate on your mortgage loan, that's great. But that doesn't tell you why that building is better, why that unit is better. That still doesn't tell you about the asset. That's telling you about something outside of the building, right? So that's definitely something that plays into that. Um, Other questions, we will share the deck. Yes, we absolutely can share the deck with everybody that has signed up. And Man will be in touch. If you are interested in the next cohort, if you could please contact Man, I can put his details back up again. So we can put you on a waiting list for cohort 2 and send you additional information. Um, we also have a question on EDGE Green Building Scheme. So there are the user guides that Vasuda from IFC has just posted in the chat. We will be issuing separate guidance to our cohorts, which will be around some of the topics that we discussed, and that will be released on a weekly basis to cohort 1. And then as new cohorts come in, we'll be able to release that information as well. Any other questions? Let me just put up Man's contact details again. Or Man, I don't know if you want to just post it in the chat. We've got a couple more questions. What trends are you seeing in other countries for green buildings in the context of green finance and carbon emissions? So Sintali works in 100 countries. So we see a lot of different trends around the world. In terms of green buildings and green finance, we're seeing definitely a big emphasis on green finance, but it's really changing. So where green finance used to be about getting some kind of preferential incentive or some kind of better deal, now it's more about, can you access that financing or not? So there's no incentive in terms of you're getting a better business deal, but it's actually about access to capital. That's really what we're seeing around the world, where investors basically have pots of money that they cannot deploy unless a product has green credentials, but it's not about incentivizing them through different interest rates. So we are seeing that around the world. There's definitely more maturity compared to sort of the last 3 to 5 years, particularly around sustainability linked mechanisms. So I think I referenced that earlier, but linking to how an organization is delivering sustainability overall. But definitely growing. It really depends by region, though. So South America has huge amounts of green finance. Europe, of course, has a lot. Africa's had less in terms of green finance products, although that is an area that's growing. And then across Asia, Southeast Asia, and then East Asia and Pacific, a lot more movement really compared to a few years ago. So I'm seeing a lot of questions about incentives in the chat. So just to say a couple of things. The most important thing and a really cool part of what we are trying to do with this program is to show you that there are opportunities beyond incentives. We understand that the market in India is obviously very driven and has a lot of incentives, and different green building standards have incentives. And that's important, that's still being addressed. And the IFC is doing efforts around making sure that EDGE is recognized in any incentives that exist. But as I mentioned, incentives are temporary. They can go away tomorrow. A government can wake up and decide we don't want to support green buildings anymore. So we can't build the business case on just the existence of the incentive. We have to build the business case on the actual business case, which is around the building, which is around costs, around risk, resilience, investment opportunity. That's the power of using building performance. And that's also the strength of EDGE because you have all that data at your fingertips. Everything is quantifiable, and you can start to see there's a real business case with or without the incentive. The incentive typically is a very small percentage. So when you're looking at a bigger business investment and really seeing kind of what changes, the incentive doesn't really change a lot on the financials. Yes, it's nice and somebody feels like they've won, but what really changes is that ongoing performance and the returns that last 10, 20, 30, 50 years whilst the building is there and operating versus a 1%, 2% saving that occurs for maybe a year or 2 years. So we're happy. We'll definitely talk more about that with our cohorts. But again, if you have any questions, do reach out to Man. I've just popped his email in the chat. And I've had a couple of questions as to whether the cohort is open to other countries around India. And yes, it is. We weren't originally planning for it, honestly, but we're very excited to see all this interest, and we're very happy to support you in nearby countries as well. So please do feel free to reach out, and we will keep you in a list and let you know as soon as the cohorts are open. There's one question, which is a very good question, around performance being the driver for owners occupiers rather than developers. So that's definitely true in terms of who wins out of having the performance, but that is where that communication element comes in because it creates a more valuable product to sell to the owner occupier. So if you can deliver a product that is going to have that performance and that's going to have that verified performance, then that product is much stronger and much more compelling to the end buyer rather than one that will ultimately, when they take it on, be very highly consuming. So yes, the risk reward, let's say, is split across multiple stakeholders, but it becomes a sales tool, becomes a communication and marketing tool. And the same thing with home buyers, right? A developer isn't going to be living in the home that has lower utility costs, but the person buying it is very interested in having a home that isn't going to cost them a lot of money to run and maintain over time. So it's around how that's being communicated and how a developer can leverage that with the owners occupiers to ultimately get the best deal for their product. I think I've answered all the questions. I don't know if there's anything else. A lot of interest of future cohorts and conversations. Again, I encourage everybody to contact us. Very happy to have one-to-ones with people, share a little bit more about our thought process. We will share our slide deck as well. And for all of cohort 1, I very much look forward to seeing you all in September in our retreat. We'll be sharing more information on that very soon. And yes, please do get in touch. This is, as I mentioned, a first for Sintali. As always, we welcome feedback. We want to work collaboratively to keep improving and keep delivering value to you all, to our partners, new or not yet partners. We genuinely take a collaborative approach because this is who we are. We genuinely believe that this is the way that we achieve mass market transformation, by working together and creating value for all of you so that we can together achieve mass market transformation.